Welcome everybody to a new post in the TFRP group with Avi Tenenbaum, and tonight we have a rare story to share that you will not hear anywhere else about a Talmid Chacham who did some pretty bad stuff, and then he did teshuva and how he did teshuva. So, about 12 years ago, I was sitting in a shul in the Bukharian neighborhood of Yerushalayim, and I pulled off the shelf an old edition of the Ben Ishchai's book called Ben Yehoyada, and I saw a fantastic inspirational story in the Ben Yehoyada. And then over the years, I wanted to tell the story over to other people and to inspire them and share them what inspired me. And I wanted to make sure that I got the details right, and I wanted to take a photocopy of it. And I couldn't find the story anywhere. And for over a decade, this story went missing. And I looked in subsequent editions of the Ben Yehoyada. I own 2 sets of the Ben Ishchai's books in my house, and the story was omitted in both of them. And cancel culture, guess what? The printers decided at some point in history to stop printing this story. So tonight we're going to bring it back, and now you're going to know the story, and it's going to happen right here and right now. How did I find the story in the end? Because I have a wonderful friend and Talmid Chacham named Rav Mati Jacobovich Shrita, and he helped me to resurface and find the story on the Omitted HaChachma computer program. Apparently it shows you how to find old editions of books that are no longer printed today, and that's where we found the old edition of this story before it was canceled. And so I wasn't delusional after all, and here's the story. So one time there was a Talmid Chacham, and the Ben Ishchai says he was single, but he was a bona fide Talmid Chacham, and this guy would learn very seriously all day and all night, every single day, Torah, and he kept Torah, and he was a great person. It says that he really was a good guy. And, these people, they work so hard, and they put in so much effort to study Torah and to work on themselves, and it's hard work, and sometimes you need to take a break. You got to do self-care and maintain the strength that you have so you can learn more, and that's a Torah value, right? So one time the Rosh Hashiva of where this man was studying had to go on a trip, and so there would be no class that day, and this Talmid Chacham said, great, there's no class, my Rosh Hashiva is on a trip, let me go walk into nature and relax and enjoy the view, and this way I'll restore my soul, I'll be able to feel better and study Torah better over the next few months because of this break that I took today, right? And that's a good idea. That's a fantastic idea. Okay? So this guy goes and he's walking in this beautiful orchard, and in the middle of the orchard he finds a well, and next to the well is this pergola, and there's this place to sit down, and he sits there and he's just enjoying the view and the serenity and the calmness, and it's just wonderful, and it's really doing good for him. And all of a sudden a Goyish Zona, a non-Jewish Zona, comes over to him and starts enticing him and seducing him, and before you know it, they do very indecent acts together, and they sin in a very serious way. And the Talmid Chacham, after this, is shocked that he did such indecent acts. He can't believe that he stooped to such a low level, and he's full of shame, and it says he can't eat, and he can't drink, and he can't sleep. He's full of such regret. So what does a person like this do? He quickly wants to do teshuva, but how do you do teshuva? So he goes to the different various sefarim that he knows and that he studied, and he tries to look up the different ways of doing teshuva, and he says none of these ways are sufficient to the grievous sin that I did. What I did is much worse. I've got to take this over the top. I've got to do, the whole 9 yards and more. And it's not enough, all the different ways of teshuva that the sefarim say. I'm going to do something extra hard. And he decides that he has no recourse to do teshuva but to end his life. Okay, so stick with me to the end of the story, and you'll hear that, thank God, he survived and lived happily ever after, but let's hear how. Okay, so he decides that he's going to go to the well the next morning, and he's going to say Shema with lots of kavanah, and he's going to throw himself into the well, and he's just going to drown, and this is going to be the end of his life, and he's doing this with a happy heart, and he's going to do teshuva, and this is going to be his teshuva, and that's the plan. So guess what happens? He wakes up next morning, he goes to the well, he says Shema with kavanah, and he's about to throw himself down this well, and guess who shows up? The Zona from the day before says, I had a feeling you would be here, I'm so happy to see you. And she starts doing bad things with him again, and it's very hard for him to escape, and she does this with him, and that with him, and that with him, and before you know it, eventually he pushes her away and runs for his life. And then he's back in yeshiva again, and now he says, how am I ever going to pull off my plan to end my life and do teshuva if she is there? That's not going to work, so I'm going to have to get up when it's dark, when the sun doesn't even come up yet, when nobody in their right mind is going to walk in the pitch black orchard, that's when I'm going to go, and that's when I'm going to do the act. I have no other choice, and that's just how it's going to be. And so he is going to go to the orchard the next day, but it didn't happen yet, okay? Because now that his plans were pushed off for the next day, guess who shows up again? The Rosh Hashiva. The Rosh Hashiva comes back from his trip, and he notices that there is something going on with this bacher, because he was missing for that time in the morning after Shacharis. He noticed that the guy wasn't around, and he already returns from the trip at that time. So he notices that the guy was not around, and he also had a dream about the bacher when he was away. So he calls the bacher over to him, and he says, Mr. Talmid Chacham bacher, what's going on? Is everything okay? Where were you? I noticed that you were missing for about 2 hours. And the guy says, nothing, I was just, walking in nature. And the Rosh Hashiva says, listen, buddy, I had a dream about you. And if you want to know the dream that I had, then you're going to have to tell me what's really going on. And the bacher breaks down crying, and he says, let me tell you what really happened. I was at this orchard yesterday when you were on vacation, and I sinned, and I did terrible things, and I felt I had no choice but to end my life in order to show Hashem that I'm really serious and I want to do teshuva. And then I went there this morning, and then this happened, and that happened, and here I am now, and I was going to take my life the next day, tomorrow morning, like as the sun was coming up or a little bit before, but now you spoiled my plans, and here I am, and I don't know what to do. And the Rosh Hashiva says, first of all, I want to tell you that I see a ray of light over your head of Kedusha. There's a halo of light over your head. And number two is, here's the dream that I had. I had a dream that I was in a palace, and I saw you in a valley. From this palace, I was seeing you standing in a valley, and you were facing off a massive snake with several heads. And then all of a sudden, you took a little knife out, and you threw it, and somehow it flew from your hand into the belly of the snake, and it killed the snake. And it was a tiny little knife, and it killed this enormous snake. And then the blood of the snake was gushing and rushing like a river, and the snake died. And it was a very strange dream. And at the end of the dream, you were thanking God that you were saved, and thank you, God, that you had this salvation and a miracle that was done for you. And that was the end of the dream. And I didn't understand what this dream was about, but now I understand. The snake was the Yetzer Hara, and was this woman that was trying to seduce you. And, you did some serious things, and you felt that the only way to do teshuva was to end your life. But it's not true. And because you decided very, very seriously that you have to do teshuva, that thought itself was good enough to be considered the teshuva. You don't have to end your life. And there's an idea in the Gemara which says that a machshava taiva HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitzarfa lamaisa. If you have a good thought, then God considers it as if you did it. And so the fact that you had this incredible remorse and regret and seriousness and desire to do teshuva and to be a great person, that itself was sufficient to do teshuva. And the fact that you were able to break away the second time from when this woman was trying to trick you and seduce you and catch you, because of this, you were able to kill the whole thing that happened, erase it off your record. You killed the snake, you killed the Yetzer Hara, and it's as if you did a perfect teshuva. A perfect teshuva. And not only that, not only was your thing erased off the record, you get a mitzvah for this whole thing too, and that's the ray of light. You became a great person, and you have a great place in Olam Haba set aside for you. Okay? And he says God does not want people to end their lives in order to do teshuva, and it is completely not necessary. It's not necessary. It's not God's ratzon. And I thought this was just a fantastic story. Because you see, first of all, great people like this person, who is apparently a great person, can fall. And that's possible to happen. And number two is, they can have some pretty kooky ideas sometimes out of regret and remorse to do teshuva in some very unhealthy ways. And that happens too. And comes along the Rosh Hashiva and says, that's not necessary. The fact that you were able to work on this and you had the regret and you were put in the same situation again, but you behaved differently, that was the teshuva. And you were able to fix everything and get it off your record and to be even greater than you were before and to get this ray of light over your head and to get a chelik and olam haba. So I thought this is an incredible story, and if you are inspired by it like me, so enjoy it. I think that it has some important lessons in it. We're able to do teshuva, we're able to make mistakes, but teshuva is there always to help us to come back to and to get things off our record and to be even greater and holier than before. And it's just an incredible thing. And the Gemara says, "B'makam shabali teshuva oimdim, ein afilu tzadikim gemurim yechayrim na'amid sham." A person who makes mistakes and then comes out of it is greater than a person who never made the mistake in the first place. Big topic. Maybe we'll have a different TFRP about that another time. I bless everybody. We should have a beautiful week, a calm, peaceful week with clarity, and we should overcome temptation. And if we didn't overcome temptation, then the next time temptation comes our way, let's do our best on the level that we're able to overcome the Yetzer Hara, to behave differently, show up to that situation differently, and to think in our minds that we want to do better, and that will be our teshuva, and we're going to be even greater than we were before. Have a good week.